Well, welcome. Yeah, it's me, Corey. I'm here in my shop this evening. As you can see, it's still a little bit of light out, not much. The sun is going down, the temperature is dropping. It's right now about 40 degrees here in my shop. For some reason, I get the urge to build things in the middle of winter, and my shop isn't exactly winterized yet. So, I have that to deal with, but I find ways to manage. What am I doing here? Well, I had an idea. I'm going to take an old table, just an old table, and turn it into a gaming table. You might have seen something like this. I think the company Geek Chic makes one. Actually, they make several, but they're up there in price. Now, don't get me wrong, they're definitely worth it, but I don't have $3 grand to plunk down on a gaming table. When I have a perfectly good table that I could turn into a gaming table and make the wife happy and not have it look like a gaming table. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll get into more of the details about everything here in a moment, but how do you begin? Well, the first thing you need is a table. Now, you can get an old table any number of ways. The one I have happened to come from my house. When we bought it, the previous owner left it. So, I took it. We used it in our kitchen for a couple years till we replaced it, and I've just had it sitting around. And I need to do something with it, get rid of it, or, I don't know, sell it, give it away. And I thought, why not do something with it? So, that's what I'm going to do. Now, the advantage that I have with this table is, it's an older table, and it's all solid wood. It's pine, but it is actual wood. It's not pressboard, MDF, anything like that. It looks as though it's been repaired in the past. There are some damages on the side that have been repaired with different materials and then restained, but for the most part, it's a decent little table that I'm going to restain and repurpose, and I'm going to have a nice new dining room, not dining room, I guess, a kitchen table with a gaming option with it as well. So let's get into it and see what we've got. I've already started some of the disassembly of it. The original top was a laminated series of 1x6s that was then covered with, well, I guess fake leather. It wasn't bad, but it was starting to peel up. As you can see, it's pine with a golden honey stain. Some leg work. Some interesting little detail work there. And something I found very interesting. At one time, there was a drawer, or at least someone was going to put a drawer in, as you can see from the dovetail joints that have been cut off there. We come around here to the front of the table. Don't mind that, I'm just tripping over something. But you can see it would have originally been right through there. So I do need to shore that up a little bit because it is a little damaged, a little cracked, but that can be fixed. There is some gouging here from some past wear, but I think that'll end up looking pretty good. I'm going to stain it a rather dark stain, so it'll all blend in. It'll be good. Back here on the other side of the table, you can see how there's none of the trim work or the detail work, because from what I can tell, this piece was apparently broken off and replaced, and someone restained it. They did a decent job, actually, on matching it. But, yeah. Not the way it's supposed to be. I'm not going to change that out, mainly because I haven't been able to find any of the trim that matches what's already on this apron, so, that's alright. As you can see in here, there is this notched wood, which is actually where support slats would originally have gone. I took them out already. We'll be putting them back in here momentarily after I get the bottom piece in. I did have to cut out the middle cross support in order to achieve what I'm going for. Now, while I'm building this as a game table, it also has to serve the function of a kitchen table. So do keep that in mind. Okay, so there's kind of a rough idea of what the table is currently. What am I going to do with it? Well, my idea has gone through many different changes over the past couple weeks of trying to work out what I wanted to do. I went from extreme remodeling to barely doing anything, and I kind of landed somewhere in the middle. Here's my goal. My goal is to have the gaming portion of the table, where the battle map, if you will be placed, It's going to be about 3.5 inches below the top. So I'm going to have a two-layer table. The top layer will be, well, replaced like it originally was, except newer wood, stained, looking nicer. That'll be the kitchen table surface. Then, when it's time to game, we pop that puppy off, and down below is the gaming surface. Now, having it lowered has a couple of advantages. One, if you're in the middle of a game wraps up, but you don't want to put everything up, you don't put everything away, you put it down in the table, you put the top back on it, you're good to go. In a couple weeks, maybe a week even, you come back to it, pop the top off, gaming can resume. And it's kind of a nice handy thing instead of having to make sure no one erases the dry erase board or whatever else we're using at the time for playing. Now we typically only play D&D, various versions. We kind of play a 3.5 variant. Maybe we'll play 5, I don't know. We didn't really like 4, so we never bought many of the books. But for our purposes, the basic battle grid will function. I guess you could use it to play Warhammer, but I think they have some strange size requirements for tournament play. We're not getting into any of that. So my little table, the battle board space will be roughly 48 inches by 30 inches with 1-inch squares marked off. Now I had considered briefly hexes, but my group has never played on a hex board. So I kind of weighed it back and forth. Doing the grid is a hell of a lot easier on my part to draw it out than it is to do hexes, and having players not used to playing on a hex board, I just thought, I'm not going to rock the boat, we'll stick to squares. If someday I want to do hexes, I can make another little overlay and slip in there underneath the plexiglass. But that brings me to my next point. The bottom will be a grid. On top of that will be plexiglass, so we can draw on it and do whatever we have to. I'll have the sides aligned. Kind of think of it as a Vegas craps table. You're going to have the lining around the inside. Probably not going to put crushed velvet on it. Maybe I will. Probably just going to stain it. And then, of course, the top goes on the top. Whole thing gets sanded down, restained, and hopefully has a nice, comfy home inside my kitchen. Now, I will point out one detail. This table is a little shorter than normal tables. Comes in at about an inch and a half shorter, so it's around 29 inches tall, bottom to top of the table. Most tables sit at around 30, 31, 30 and a half, somewhere in that neighborhood. The second point that matters here is the apron. Now the apron is what basically comes down underneath the tabletop and down around the side. A lot of times its function is really just support for the legs. The apron on this one is also rather deep. It comes in, it's in the neighborhood of about, when you figure it all together, about 6 inches. What this means is you have to be very particular about what chairs you pair with this table. If your chairs have arms, they ain't going to go under. That's what we ran into, why we stopped using it the first time. Since then, those chairs have kind of been retired, and so I have more chairs that have no arms than arms. I have a shortage of chairs, basically, at my house, and I need to resolve that situation, but knowing what I know now, I know to look for chairs with no arms, and everything will fit. Now, I had considered also, I mentioned earlier, the length of the project and the intensity I wanted to go with. I could have decided to put drawers in here, very simply. Could have raised the play area up a couple of inches, making it just below the surface, and have drawers. I didn't stick with this idea mainly because having the play surface so high to the top then kind of defeated the point of having it underneath it at all. At that point, I could have simply had an insert that on one side of the dining table, flip it over, grid on the other. That would have been much simpler to do, and then build drawers. I didn't feel like the benefit to us was going to be there to trade off the depth for the drawers. Because really, I don't want to keep a lot of role-playing stuff in my kitchen table drawers. I have kids. They're going to get in there. They're going to drop stuff in them. So it just didn't seem like a good idea. Yeah, given different circumstances, it might be. And I could always change it back out and do that later. Another idea I had considered was some sort of a pull-out for the DM that has a little book stand, even pull-outs for the players. Because with the current setup, the limitation will be there's no place to really put your books. But the way we usually play is that there's usually only 4, maybe 5 of us, including the DM. So we have plenty of space. We usually grab an extra chair. I have little side tables we pull up. So that's not really as big a thing for us. But do keep that in mind. It wouldn't be a bad idea to slip something like that into a project like this. So let's see what's next and see where I'm going. Okay, now this is the board that will become the basis for the battle board. It measures 30 inches across by 48 inches. I'm using a hardwood plywood. I didn't really need to use that for the battle boards part, mainly because you're never going to see it. It's going to be painted and gridded. But I did this mainly for one reason. I could get a sheet of it cheaper than I could just a partial sheet. So I went with that because I needed the thicker, nicer stuff for the top. So basically I have 2 pieces identical to this piece. One will go in the top area, be stained, turned into a dining or kitchen table. The other one will go down below. But in order to get it down below, we do have to cut out for it. Each corner, basically it's a 2x2 square. And the reason for this is, if we get a shot in there, the corners, the legs. With these notches out, I should be able to insert the wood from the bottom and place it where it needs to be. And voila, we will have the beginning of our table. Okay, so the next step is to cut the squares out. We're going to use this. It's a jigsaw. Covered in sawdust. Yeah, so basically it will do what I need to do. Vroom, vroom. Yeah, do be sure to not cut your original table while you're cutting this. And with that, the first one's done. I should point out, I probably should be wearing eye protection, but with the jigsaw, I'm not as worried. If I was using a skill saw or something like that, I probably would. Also, ear protection. I've got these ear muffins on, so they did the job for me. Your mileage may vary. Okay, so slight update. I did have to go ahead and remove another part of the table in order to get my new bottom piece in due to the geometry of everything. I'll get into that in detail here in a moment. But suffice it to say, I had to take this part off, which was the back apron, the part that wasn't. It was basically a replacement part, so not a big deal. It was actually only held in by 2 very small nails, so it was probably a good thing I had to do this, so I can re-engineer this, get it put back in there once I get the bottom. So let's take a look. Okay, so as you can see, this is where the apron was that I took out. And you can see the little nail there that was holding it in. You can also see, if it'll come into focus, there we go, some of the damage from the original wood that was here that apparently got broken off or something, who knows. That happened well before I ever came along, so there you go. So now I should be able to lift that in there, get it set for a dry fit, and see how we're going to do this.